Hi Research Methods classroom and classmates and Professor Shah. This is a presentation on outcome evaluations as part of our Applied Research Methods peer learning assignment number 2. And so I'm going to be instructing everybody on outcome evaluations. I'll write this on the board. Begin. Begin measurable. And so this group presentation is done and organized by me, Chua Zhang, Jasmine McCoy, and Lindsay Val Elzen. So part of our presentation, what is outcome evaluation? So what is it? Evaluation is a process that examines a program. And with that, it involves collecting, analyzing information and about a program's activities, characteristics, and outcomes. So, the purpose is to make judgments about a program to improve its effectiveness and or to inform program discussions. So I'm going to write down improve effectiveness and inform programming decisions. Evaluation. There's so many things about evaluation. It could be on community engagement, methods, participatory, dependent, quantitative, effectiveness, social impacts, theories, data, design, to name just a few examples. When is outcome evaluation best used? So we go with the when. And so questions are asked, is the program achieving its objectives? So there's 3 points for agencies. One is determine if a program is achieving their goals. Determine if achieving goals. The next one is to secure funding for specific programs. Secure funds for specific programs. And then the last but not least is a specific position or program within the agency as far as what your evaluation is on. Program or position. Moving forward, what are the specific goals of outcome evaluation? So we got the what, when, and what are the goals? There's 4 goals. One is to, we kind of alluded to securing funds for specific programs, but then as a more detail to the specific goal, outcome evaluation is for client needs. And then the second one is gauge client satisfaction of services over a period of time tracked. So we can write down client satisfaction for services over time And then the third one is evaluate programs, process, and contribute to cost effectiveness in activities. So we have process and contributes to cost effectiveness and cost effective. And then the last one is overall goals of outcome evaluation is to hold programs accountable and evaluate accuracy. So accountable and accuracy. So now we know what the what, when, and goals are. Is outcome evaluation formative or summative in nature? So we research information and we went through the textbook, Newman, and we found that outcome evaluation is summative in nature, or summative in nature. And what are the reasons for asking why is it summative instead of formative? And we came up with from Newman's textbook that outcome evaluation is essentially reviewing the data collected and reviewing final program outcomes. Researchers can evaluate a program by measuring its accomplishment against stated goals and objectives. Consider the following questions in outcome evaluations for summative purposes. Patterns and themes that emerge. Then you have the results. Do they make sense? Make sense of results. And then our findings surprise. Did they surprise you or are they surpriseful? Surprising. And then we have are the findings meaningful in a practical way, so more of your findings. And then the third one to recap is about do any of the findings surprise you? The second one is do the results make sense? And the first one is which patterns and themes emerge. So for the last one I'm going to write down is finding meaningful in practicality. Alright, so moving ahead, what are the ethical aspects of outcome evaluation? So when we talk about ethics in social work, we always go back to the NHSW Code of Ethics, and this is from their edits in the 2018 version. And so it's a long clause, but basically it's social workers engaged in evaluation or research should carefully consider possible consequences and should follow guidelines developed for the protection of evaluation and research participants. Appropriate institutional review boards should be consulted. So to sum up, evaluation research should always think of the consequences and the guidelines should be followed for the protection of the evaluation and research participants. So we always want to be careful and aware of that. I'm not going to put it down. I'm sure many of you can reference that. It's part of the Code of Ethics. So next is example of outcome evaluation in a social work context. So there's a couple steps as far as an example, and this is from the CDC, Center for Disease and Control. This is a summary of the framework for program evaluation. And so I'm using one of their appendixes. So there's going to be about 6 steps. So I'm just going to go through them briefly. Evaluation outcomes. So we have, when we talk about funding, we have to engage and grants stakeholders. They could be our clients, they could be our funders, they could be our partners, they could be our sponsors, so we always want to keep them engaged. And so next is describe the program, what you're evaluating, or what is evaluating. And then the third one is need the focus of the evaluation design. So the focus of evaluation design. And then moving on to the fourth one, I'm going to explain the steps and then I'll go back and add a little bit insert on some of the explanations and descriptions of those. So the fourth one is gather credible evidence. The fifth one is justify conclusions. So justifying the conclusions of, engaging the stakeholder, describing the program, focus on evaluation designs, and gathering credible evidence. And the sixth one, down the steps are ensure use and share lessons learned. So this would be your final step. Ensure use and share lessons. From your evaluation. Okay, so transitioning to a model that we found on one of the research articles that were links that Dr. Shah, you sent to us as a whole group. There's kind of like a circular sort of rotation of different steps or principles that are standards, right, for outcome evaluations. And so 1 is utility, 2 is feasibility, 3 is propriety, and 4 is accuracy, as reviewed and summarized here. But I'm going to write down this wheel so it's presentable, and it's also approachable for many of you to remember our outcome evaluation presentation. So we have this big wheel. So this marker is running out of ink, so I'm going to use the darker marker here. And so in this wheel, there's about a continuum of 6 different items. So the first item is engage stakeholders. And then it moves along to basically the steps here, but I'm going to write it down and draw it so then many of you can have a photogenic memory of it. So you describe program. Then you have focus on the evaluation design. And then you have gather credible evidence. And then justifying your conclusions. And last but not least, part of the continuum, ensure use and share lessons. So it's supposed to be a little bit better as far as spaced out, but for this purpose it's fine if this last space is a little bit bigger. So ensure use and shared Okay, so this is kind of the continuum of the wheel for evaluation as part of one example. So we're getting close to the end, but we're gonna also talk about limitations and challenges in conducting outcome evaluation in an agency context. So the board is pretty much covered, and so I'm gonna just be listing those points for you, and if you need to go back and review them, you can take a look at this video again and go back and kind of analyze that. But basically, limitations and challenges to conducting outcome evaluation in an agency context. One is interpreting results and reaching conclusions can be challenging even if it is reported as objective. So you have to be objective, but interpretation and conclusion of that can be a challenge. Two, key stakeholders must review findings and preliminary conclusions. So like I said, the stakeholders, while we're engaging them, must review our findings and have preliminary conclusions about them. And then third, stakeholders must agree that conclusions are justified in order to use the evaluation results with confidence. So after reviewing the conclusions and agreeing with it or disagreeing with it, they have to justify your evaluations and results with confidence. And then the fourth one is be careful not to skew results by looking at data out of context. So we always have to be ethical and presentable with our data. And then last, ensure conclusions can be linked directly to your findings in your evaluations and research. So here are some of our references. We used the NASW Code of Ethics in 2018, and then we use also From Education Theory to Conservative Practice presented at annual meeting of the International Association for Fish and Wildlife Agency. And then we also use a development stage approach to program